I'm Joshua Kemble, and I am heading home from work where I work as an art director, and I am exhausted, but also I feel a bit of exhilaration because my team, which by the way, everything I mentioned on this vlog and on my YouTube channel are not representative of the business that I work for, but I will say it was a good day. It was like we overcame what seemed like impossible odds for just accomplishing some pretty ambitious goals. And I felt like it was a really successful day. I also feel really good about last night's live stream. If you guys haven't been watching the live streams, you probably have. I think they're probably the more popular thing on my YouTube channel. But yeah, if you guys haven't been tuning into the live streams, you should definitely check them out. They're a lot of fun. We get pretty goofy because quite often when I'm doing live streams, I'm pretty exhausted. And there's kind of this funny midnight humor that tends to happen on these things that I can't explain it, but I feel like there's something about the live stream environment that kind of brings out the goofiness in me. I feel like we had a really good art casters too, and so yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm feeling pretty good about overall like how things are going. I feel optimistic about hitting my deadline. The page that I'm working on has been like the nightmare page that's taken almost all week to do. And so that's a little tough, but at the same time, I know it's like worthwhile to kind of spend the time to make it better. And I'm hoping that this weekend can be like a catch up, where I can at least knock out a couple more pages and start chipping away at the 200 that I will have left starting the weekend. Assuming that I get home, nap, and then finish up that page tonight. I think that kind of needs to happen. Yeah, other than that, I'm kind of torn and conflicted, and that's something that I thought would be a really interesting thing to kind of talk about on my vlog as I'm heading home. I get hit with plagues of self-doubt every once in a while, and less so now. One of the nice things about aging and getting older is moments of self-doubt really distance themselves quite a bit. Like in general, in life, I feel pretty confident. I feel pretty set in my path. I feel pretty good about the decisions that I make. I'm accepting of my failures. I'm accepting of my successes. I'm better at taking a compliment than I used to be as a young man. And I'm generally a little more self-assured about the direction that the arrow of my life is pointing. And I think that's just what happens with maturity and with maturing as an artist as well, where you start realizing, like, you know, the dream of becoming Michelangelo or like a great artist may not be insane. Like, it's not bad to have that ambition, but you do start coming to terms with like your flaws and strengths and weaknesses as an artist, what you need to work on. You also notice like your own limitations, and part of aging is coming to terms with your own limitations, because limitations start physically manifesting at the age I'm at a lot more than they used to. And so you start learning how to be comfortable and to work with your limitations, and in a weird way that brings out strength. But that being said, every once in a while, like today, when I'm having a good day, I do get hit with like a lot of self-doubt. And I wanted to talk about it on my vlog, and not complain about it. I always feel like these vlogs function as a way, and hopefully they'll be helpful to you guys too, but I feel like they're a good way to kind of analyze and document my own thought processes, when it comes to art and workflow, and to try to give like almost like a snapshot of the life of a cartoonist. And not every cartoonist, but at least what cartooning is like for me, in hopes that, you know, if you are out there and you're kind of going through a similar thing, you'll be able to kind of relate and not feel alone. Because I do remember as a young cartoonist feeling like an immense sense of like isolation and loneliness when it came to art. And I've talked about that on previous vlogs about like cartooning and loneliness. I think there's something inherent to cartooning and cartoonists and mental illness and loneliness. But that all being said, today I definitely got hit with like the weird self-doubt stuff where I feel like, great, I've achieved some things I wanted to achieve, and then I started kind of dissecting the achievements and sort of undermining them in my head. So I'd be like, well, Jacob's Apartment, it's finally published. I finally have, you know, 2 graphic novels out that I can be very proud of. And I am very proud of them. But then I thought about like sales numbers, and I'm like, I have no idea what the sales numbers are like. I don't know if I am really doing a great job at promoting it, because I haven't really been able to book any store signings. And I've kind of missed the ball, I think, with the 2 conventions that I was considering, just because of, frankly, just juggling creating the next graphic novel, as well as, you know, juggling a lot of like unforeseen events outside of that, the life stuff, you know. So today I got hit with a real up and down, where I started thinking of things like a really good idea, like where it's like I really miss life drawing and I enjoy life drawing. And I was realizing that if I did streams where, like on my live stream where I did life drawings, like I just kind of opened it up and said like, hey, whoever wants to, you know, come on, I'll do their portrait. And then to like share a link with whoever would want to do that. I was thinking that would be a cool business model. But then I was realizing like I already have a pretty stable career in art. and the side thing for me is the comic thing. So adding another side thing would be kind of a distraction from it. But that might be something I experiment with when I'm caught up with my comics. Maybe that's something I actually take on. I'm a big believer in the idea of if you have a good idea. Anyhow, I started thinking about like what would that implement like? What would that look like? Like how would you run something like that? What sort of materials would you need to do it? I was thinking that would be great because I could do some life painting, which I like never get to do anymore. Anyhow, so that's one realm of thought that started my day. I started getting plagued by doubts of like sales numbers of my book, which I know nothing about. The last I heard, it's doing great. But when you have a book newly released, there's like this just tense, like nerve-wracking feeling of like, of hoping that it's gonna sell well. And you know, like especially when it's something you invested years of your life into, it's like one of those things where I'm like, I hope people are interested in Jacob's Apartment. I haven't seen a lot of reviews lately of it, so that started kind of digging its nails in. That's a good way to describe it, because it's like these negative thoughts that just kind of start embedding. And also, by the way, just full disclosure, I wrote a whole book about it, but it's like I am very prone to depression. I don't think I'm alone in that. I think there's a good chunk of the population that are prone to depression. And I'm a Christian, and so I think there's an underlying reason for that, because I think that we're quite often finding ourselves in a world that we are not meant for. Like, we were designed for a different world, and it got corrupted, and now we're kind of stuck in this world. And the best we can do, as Ecclesiastes talks about, is sort of like enjoy the wife of our youth, enjoy, what is it? Basically to like eat, drink, and be merry in a weird way, and then serve God. Like that's the general gist. Like the big, there's a thesis, and then that's the conclusion of Ecclesiastes, is like roughly that, which I totally misquoted, because I do not. If I had Frank here, he'd probably be able to like directly quote the part of Ecclesiastes that I'm talking about, because Frank's a guy who like has memorized that book. But I tend to, the concepts stick with me more than the specific verses, which has always been an issue with me. Anyhow, I was gonna ramble. Man, I can go on a tangent, because it's like that was about to divert me to talking about my learning style and the fact that I generally remember concepts and general ideas more than specifics, and so like my learning style has always been much more conceptual. My art style is much more conceptual. Like I'm a much more concept-based person. The technical stuff all kind of falls into line in like supporting the concept, which to me, like the concept's just something I have a better grasp of. And there we go, I just went on a tangent. So anyhow, so then I was thinking about, I have a really good friend who they have somebody I grew up around that was almost like a second parent to me, and I just recently found out some really bad news about that person that I don't think has been shared publicly, so I'm not going to get too heavily into it, but it's some dark existential type stuff. And then there's been some dark existential type stuff happening outside with like family and friends, and those kind of moments of like the grief of existence, where I'm reminded of like the mortal coil that we're all kind of controlled by, right? And I don't know, it's weird. It's weird to me that I can, as an artist, be filled with contentment over my situation, over my life, over my art, and at the same time get filled with such discontentment and be reminded of this vacuum that I think we all have, like this kind of emptiness. It's like there's this thing, and I've talked about this before on my vlog too, but it's like, it's profound to me that as an artist, like one of my main goals, one of my life goals, was to do a graphic novel. And when I finished that graphic novel, and this, you'll notice this about older people when you meet them, when I finally reached that top of the ladder, it's not like I got to like just check out and cash in my chips, because I felt like, well, I've got another story in me, and then I got another out, and I'm still filled with that, and now I'm working on the next, striving against the wind to kind of make these things happen, and observing how absurd that is. Like, I guess, like, I'm not trying to be depressing here. I'm just, like, sort of thinking about how interesting it is to me that I find joy in what I do, and I find joy in getting my work out there, and I find joy in my family and my friends, and in the beauty around me in life. And yet I also can't help but see this giant vacuum of void, like the existential void. I have stared at it. And you get older and you start being reminded of it. And there's this kind of tense balancing act between the two. And I personally find the act of creating is like that. The act of living is like that. Like where you're living your life with friends, and those friends will eventually pass away. You're living life, and your life will eventually be gone. You're creating work, and the work will eventually erode or corrupt, or it won't achieve what you want it to achieve, or it will achieve what you want it to achieve, or you'll want one person to read it, and when you have one person read it, you want 10 people to read it, and when you have 10 people, you want 100 people, and when you have 100 people, you want 1,000, and so on and so on. It's this profound dog chasing its tail of life. It's like the Sisyphean thing where you're pushing the perpetual boulder up the hill. And I don't know, today is weird because I was filled with this great sense of excitement about my project, pride over my team doing really well at my job, pride and joy in the fact that I'm having some success at my job where I work. I'm pretty good at what I do. I'm human, so I'm not doing things as perfectly as I would like. I love my wife. I love my kid. I'm happy with so many things. But there's this void, and it's an interesting and strange thing to be confronted with the mirror of the two realms of this is so lame to say, but it's like the two realms of life, where all of these things that I love are temporary and will be gone. And so I am left with, after all of this, I am left with joy and complete sorrow. And this feeling that there's something off, I don't know if you guys have that. I talk about it in two stories, but I kind of depict this as like a cloud that kind of follows me around everywhere I go. I've written songs about it too, but it's interesting. It's like no matter how well or bad things are going in my life, I'm always, facing the perpetual doom and death that is awaiting me. It's just like chasing me around. And then I have friends and acquaintances that have lost people. It's just been a rough few months for people that I know. And there's been a lot of mortality stuff happening. So I'm left with this thought of what is the purpose of rolling the boulder, right? This was the whole premise of Two Stories, was kind of starting it out that way. And book one is really just establishing that question. And what I'm left with on my drive home is what I wrote about in book two, which is my faith. That is my rock that I can rest on and know that there is purpose and intention, and there is something beyond just sort of this thing, this dog chasing its tail, the boulder rolling up, being pushed up the hill perpetually, the pursuit of money or security or artistic vision. These are all things of substance. I'm not saying, I'm not taking the nihilistic viewpoint that I used to have when I was at the point that I wrote about in Two Stories. I think there very much is a point to life and to what we're going through. it's just interesting. It's been an interesting day, and I couldn't help but want to talk about that juxtaposition of like the high and the low, and how often I experience that, like mixed together. Like they're like a married couple. the high and the low. I don't know. I don't really know where that goes. I hope that wasn't a depressing one. I can't help but think that the striving has a purpose too. I think that if I look at things from the bedrock of my faith, like where if I build my premise of existence on Christ as a solid rock, then I have nothing to fear in this life. In theory. Right? I mean, it's one thing to know something and it's another to know it, right? But it's been an interesting, I don't know if I can explain it, but it's been an interesting drive today, heading home, where I'm pondering these things, and I'm filled with almost a grief for the impossibility of achievement. Meaning, like, if life is just kind of achieving and accomplishing goals that I'm like ticking off a list, I inevitably am like finite. I talked about this a little bit with a vlog where I talked about, I think I jokingly was like, welcome to my vloggins, you're all gonna die. But it's like, we're gonna be striving to kind of achieve these great goals, and I'm not gonna quit striving. But inevitably, as you get older, like for me, I'm like at the age where I've started to realize, what is it? This is kind of a side tangent, but it's connected. So I'm just gonna go, because it's my vlog, whatever. So there's this part in Peter Pan. I was reading this. I reread Peter Pan, I think when Ben was like really tiny. I read him the whole book. And I got to this part at the very beginning where it was talking to the dad character in Peter Pan, which I didn't really remember. And something about like Tinkerbell being in the drawer. But then there was this thing that wasn't in like the Disney film that's in Peter Pan, the original story, where it said that his father, that the father had put his dreams in the drawer, and the more that he, like once he had put them in the drawer, he found it harder and harder to reopen that drawer, because he had to do that to have kids or whatever. And it was this profound thing. I don't feel that. Like, the nice thing about my son has been the fulfillment of a lot of dreams. But I do think there was something profound about that idea of adults putting their dreams in a drawer. Because I think that inevitably, like, no matter how many of your dreams you achieve, they'll always fall short of this ideal, because it's like the pursuit of something great is always almost like more profound and enjoyable than the actual great thing, because we're not going to be fully fulfilled. Like, it fits my philosophy, because I don't think we're going to be fully fulfilled until we meet, Christ. Anyhow, I don't know. It's a really interesting thing, this whole existence thing. And I don't know. I think a lot of the time, like when you're watching YouTube videos or vlogs or things like that, you're often, and social media is like this too, we're often sharing our highs, like all our best moments. We're seeing the party but not the aftermath. We're seeing the drinking but not the hangover, right? Although I guess there is a movie called The Hangover. But even in that, right, you're seeing like these wacky adventures. You're not quite often seeing the aftermath. And I just think it's interesting to be transparent about that kind of thing. Not to try to spread gloom. But I don't know, like, I feel like, I talked about this a bit when I went to TCAF. That, like, going to TCAF was like this kind of dream. And there were a lot of amazing, incredible things that happened at that convention. And this year, it felt like the culmination of a year or two that I've been experiencing that have been incredible for me. Like, a lot of great things that I've worked an entire career to try to kind of accomplish, and some people accomplish early, has just, like, doors have opened in the last year or so that I just never, I had almost given up hope would open. And so I have every reason to, like, you know, as a believer, you know, kneel before God and thank Him for the provisions and blessings that He's given my life. I have every reason to be thankful in my life, and I am thankful. But I am forever, like, going to probably be juggling this feeling of sorrow and loss. As you get older, like, you lose your youth. And there's a joy in that, because your youth is kind of horrible. But there's also a sorrow in seeing capabilities disappear. Like, your hands aren't able to draw as effectively as they used to. Your mind your mind, I think, tends to get sharper. That's something I don't miss. I don't miss having a young man's mind at all. But your ambition, right? The young ambition is hard to kind of retain and keep. But I don't want this to sound like some old man, like, kind of ranting, because I don't think that means that there's doom in the world. I think it just means that there is something of beautiful significance in storytelling that is mirroring this dynamic of, like, tragedy and comedy being depicted and both being felt at the same time. Like, you can have both. Like, you can have blessings and sorrow. It's an interesting experience. And I'm not, like, depressed. I'm not like giving up on my stories or anything like that. I'm just kind of observing thoughts as they're happening. And that's something I've gotten better at as well. And maybe that can be a useful thing to come out of this just kind of vlog that I'm not even sure I'm not sure if there's, like, a bow to wrap this idea with. Other than, isn't it amazing that there's something like art that can kind of provide a pointer to these two polarities of existence and experience? I think that's kind of, there's something magical about that. And to participate in that is really quite a gift. To be able to try to target something of sorrow and something of joy in your work, to try to somehow encapsulate this confusing experience that we all go through. That's life, you know. The sorrow and joys of raising a child, and then if you raise your child well, they're eventually going to, you know, fly away. Like they're gonna become fully independent creatures of their own who don't need, you know, the constant love and attention and adoration of their parents. There's just a thing, I mean, I'm not saying anything profound. This is an old story that I'm telling on this vlog, and perhaps it's just making me sound old, but it's been an interesting thing to observe. Oh, that was the point. I was saying, one thing that's helped me a bit with navigating darker thoughts or ecstatic thoughts, the ups and downs, is I have gotten better at being able to kind of feel something and then kind of go, oh, that's interesting. Like, I know that's weird, but it's like to be able to kind of live in interesting. I had a great day. I had a great day yesterday. I have great things happening. And yet there's this underlying darkness. What is that? And I can actually entertain that thought, but not get lost in it. It's almost like an outside observer looking into the self and the ego and kind of pulling apart like the two emotions I'm experiencing, and be able to kind of see them from a distance and sort of describe them, follow them through their little threads, and then set them aside, like once I'm done, like, because I have a foundation that gives me purpose. It's an interesting thing, but I don't know why I thought of that today. I don't know if this vlog is going to come across as like pretentious and ridiculous, or if you guys have had those moments too, but I've been surprised today by that. I've been surprised by that. And I can't help but think there's something about that we're all trying to capture in our art. Like something about that weird duality. So yeah, that's my thoughts on my vloggins. I'll try to edit this and get it posted up before my live stream tonight. But who knows, because it does take a long time to upload. This might appear during my live stream. Anyhow, I hope you guys are having a good day. If this was too dark, let me know in the comments section if you want me to stay super positive and successful and awesome all the time. I can attempt that, I guess. But I feel like there's times where it's important to be real with people. And that's what's real for me right now. It's yeah, it's a weird day. All right, I will see you guys on my live stream tonight, where I'll be working on comics. And I hope you guys are hanging in there in this crazy roller coaster that we call life. All right, talk to you later. Bye.